Hey guys, it's Nathan from Flashback Creative Productions, the company that goes out there and finds niche companies in the fall driving outdoor caravan and camping area, looks at things that are going to benefit drivers that hit the road and get out in the outdoors. And today we welcome Chris from Outback Diesel Systems with your brand Boostec. Chris, welcome today, mate. How you going?
Thanks. Yeah, pretty good.
So obviously what brought us here today, Chris, is that earlier on at the start of this year, late last year, I bought the transmission Lockup kit for my Isuzu 4JJ3 MUX. And obviously that has transformed my life. Towing caravans, been off-road a lot,
Sure.
Especially the drive. I do a lot of trips to Canberra where, a lot of my work is and here to Sydney. I'm based in Wagga regionally, so we're down in Melbourne a lot. We're up to Sydney and anywhere in between, even further out west to some places. It really has transformed my car in a way that I never thought. Tell us about that product specifically to start with. Where did the idea come from, and why is there a need for that product when we've got a perfectly good car coming out of a developer?
Yeah, okay. So, the transmission's out of AS in Japan, and it's used across the board for quite a number of vehicles. It's like sort of a medium duty, fairly modern transmission that just does the job. And how I actually got into doing a lockup kit for the Isuzu JJ3 was actually through pretty much a mistake. I tried to do things through ECM and TCM reflashing, which I was already doing for quite some time. And essentially, I had a massive issue, and some guys will understand this, like when you're trying to turn off DDCs in some of these more modern ECUs, like you'll come across issues where the vehicle will pretty much no longer start. So I had one of these like massive failures where I had to let down a customer, run around, sort them out. And I was just really stubborn and didn't want it to let me, to let it beat me. And so I was looking for methods to actually integrate where we can use the traditional kind of lockup kit, but where it does interface with, like, say, CAN bus, which is a data communication set in the vehicles. So as soon as I found a method to do it, like it was basically like talk to someone that can help me develop the software, and I'll help them steer it in a direction where we can make something that's useful for the community. And it just totally worked out. Like there was a time though that like we were actually looking at it and thinking we have to abandon it. It was, I don't think people knew actually how close that came. And that was purely like just trying to understand how a certain aspect of CAN bus works, or how we can filter a part of the CAN bus system out. So we had an issue pretty late into the development where we didn't know how to prevent the vehicle from thinking that it's in the wrong gear, even though everything works flawlessly. And so we had to change. We basically worked out a way to refilter the system and give it a range where it can be accepted inside the ECU, and everything worked. Yeah. And it was just like, oh, well, we figured it out. But like, this was something that was never done before, and I don't know of any other, products that actually fit that description. So it was definitely like something that hasn't been charted by anyone else, and it just happened to work.
So, a very unique product that is plug and play now. I've done a review video for you before. We'll put a link of that in the description of this video. And during my review phase, obviously, I drove to Canberra and back from Gundagai, and the hills there, the road, the hills there are massive. Although I wasn't towing, what I found was, to drive the hill with the kit turned off, obviously deactivated, transmission temperatures went up, your coolant temperature went up, the revs were all over the place, the gears were all over the place. As soon as we, I guess, flicked it back on, you really, we stopped for a fair bit, let everything cool down, and went again with the gear on, and it just sort of, everything just sat perfectly. Yeah. How does it balance it all out? Like, how does it keep your temperatures down, and what's the fault in the design build of the models? Yeah, so what we find is, like, guys that spend enough time in the industry, like, you got to understand that, like, a lot of products, or I should say a lot of vehicles are delivered to be like a one size fits all. And unfortunately, like, say the towing aspect of a vehicle, or like they might have a great engine, might have great capability, might have the GVM and everything like that, and be quite robust. But then
they're not really designed to be that predominantly. And when people buy them to basically use them as a tow vehicle, there is usually some sort of aspects of the vehicle that aren't really made to do that full time, I should say. And so when this one size fits all gets delivered, like you got to remember, these vehicles get used for hire. They get used by families just going to get groceries, you know, and
the old 7-seater soccer mum car.
Yeah, of course, yeah. and so you got like the towing aspect then as well. So the more you load them up, and it is it's a common theme here in Australia too, like, you know, go out and travel and enjoy the outdoors, and there's no better way than like doing it with a caravan. Basically, like they're not really catered to from the factory because it's a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So all we do is like basically make it, like say for this kit, like we just basically make it do what you want it to do while you're towing. And most of it is just like bring down temps, bring down RPM, bring down this hunting. We refer it to as hunting, or people refer it to as hunting, but it doesn't actually do anything about gear changes. It just prevents this lock and unlock situation in the RPM.
Yeah.
So basically the converter clutch is always working to some degree. Yeah. And then it goes to a full lockup at some point. But in the factory system, the tipping point to unlock is quite low. So it doesn't take much for it to start flaring and carrying on.
And I did notice that prior to putting the kit in my car.
Sure.
I did notice that, like I'm pulling 3 ton of caravan. There's normally 4 of us, 2 dogs in the car and the kitchen sink. So we do have a lot of gear with us. What I've noticed is, before the gear went in, we'd be sitting on 100 on the highway.
Sure.
Some of those hills are pretty big. You'd foot to the floor 100%. And you just couldn't keep the speed. You'd drop back to about 70 and you'd be able to maintain that speed at 70. The revs are going up and down, the speed drops. So since we put the kit in, we did a test run over New Year's. And I know I was speaking to you online sort of over New Year's about the product, which I'm very grateful for. I found coming home that, climbing those hills, the best thing about it was that, into manual, slide it into manual, lock it in a 4th or 5th. So we're sitting on the lower revs, the higher gears, and there wasn't much, loss of that torque and.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there is obviously like there's a lot of factors that are going into, that are being calculated by the ECM and TCM at any point. But since we're overriding a part of it, like there is a temperature aspect as well. Like there is a curve inside the TCM that basically, once things start getting hot, it will try and favour not getting hot. And that will usually result in things like, earlier gear changes, using a gear that's more suitable, or finding a torque band that's more suitable for the engine. So there is a lot of aspects that go into it, but what you'll find is like, because everything's running cooler, and we're not overusing parts of the gearbox that normally would be, in a pretty neutral sort of state. Yeah. It does correct itself, and it'll run as if it's like in a cooler state. So that's like where you might feel that like the gear changes, or like it does try to actually keep in a taller gear rather than like downshift itself. But obviously, like, that's if you're using auto mode. If you use the manual mode, it's a completely different story.
It's a beast, mate. It's a beast. Even driving, up here yesterday, manual 5th gear, I can fly up hills. I needed to drop to 4th when I really need to. And even some of the smaller hills, 6 to 5, 6 gear most of the way. The fuel consumption, even without towing, it's still a heavy car with all the. You've seen my car,
of course,
all the gear that's on it. It's amazing. So looking forward now, obviously that's just part of a vast array of products you've got. What else? What other sort of products do you have?
Well, I ended up buying Isuzu just for development as well, like many companies do. And you do see other areas that you can assist customers with, I guess, like in their operation. And like one of the things was like, even just when you do fit a long range tank, like you'll find that, like, say, your indicator on your dashboard does stay full for quite some time, and then like it'll be overzealous as well and tell you, hey, you're going to run out of fuel pretty soon, but you've got like another 200 k's left. And that's towing. So what we found is like even making like a little device such as this, which is just our fuel tank corrector, or it's a fuel level corrector. So the way this actually works is it'll change the signal at its highest points and at its lowest points. So you get more of this middle band which is quite usable, and you can configure it basically into, I think we calculated like there's, over 10 settings on the high and the low that will be effective, and depending on like what fuel tank you do fit, you might find some settings are better than others. But like the initial results are like, yes, it does correct the display to be more, more user friendly. So that was just one thing, and probably the biggest one is actually like we've gone into understanding how the transmissions work in the Isuzus, and developed a kit that basically replaces the whole TCM completely. So that's a product that we have officially launched, but we haven't launched it in a production phase yet. So we've got approximately 15 of these units out there at the moment, and they're we have found a lot of differences, or a lot of facts, I should say, that were unknown previously. Like, no one just basically knew that, like, 21, 22 models had a completely different, well, I shouldn't say completely different, but a variation of the valve body that's found in the 23 and 24 models. And so we were treating them all the same, but in the end, we actually had to treat them at a separation point depending on the build date. That was probably one of the biggest things, and having full gearbox control like you do, then have the possibility to change your shift points and so forth, or add different features. And we've integrated that with a diff lock controller as well, so you get diff lock anytime inside the TCM. So it's basically just using signals that are generated from buttons and allowing them to pass through to the diff lock controller. And that's probably like some of the biggest stuff. And obviously, like, we have a full range of ECUs and TCUs that we do for other makes and models too. So it's not specifically Isuzu.
So Chris, mate, we've been speaking a lot about these TCU kits and about the CANHACKER. Tell us a bit of history about the the Japanese manufacturers like Aisin.
So with Aisin manufacturing, we came into the scene and have been working with the 4-speed solenoid type transmissions, which is essentially what you find in early Isuzus, early Toyotas, and their models will be like A340s, A442Fs, and they're quite simple to operate. So they're all solenoid based, and then there was an iteration from Aisin to run a 5-speed in the A750. This is also found in Isuzu and Toyotas. And this was Aisin's first attempt to actually run a clutch-to-clutch shift in 4th to 5th and 5th to 4th. And we did find quite a few quirks there, so it took us quite some time to develop that, but essentially we got there in the end.
Exactly. Okay, so the history of Aisin gearboxes, how have they evolved over the years?
So with how they've evolved from basically a 4-speed solenoid to a 5-speed with some clutch-to-clutch parameters, and then they've evolved to like essentially more and more PWM clutch-to-clutch type shifting. But for robustness, they have actually on-off solenoids for quite some time for robustness. And then they've basically transitioned to clutch-to-clutch shifts using a PWM type solenoid system. So that's what we've seen, and they've gone from like a 4 to 5 to 6, then to 8, and then to a 10-speed. And that's usually more to do with chasing the fuel economy and keeping the engine in its most efficient range. And what we found is basically, with more gear shifts, like there is more controls involved, and they might not feel as robust, but they definitely can handle all the power if they're designed correctly from the start.
Now, the ZF gearboxes and things like the 8-speed, what sort of controllers do you have available for them?
Okay, so we actually integrate with other controls. We don't make something specifically for them, although we could potentially use them. It's just to develop a gearbox, it does take quite a lot of time. So we've gone the route of integrating with, say, Turbo Lamic, and also with CAN TCU and possibly Max ECU at some point. They do have amazing controllers, and they've done all the hard yards, so there's no point for us to actually develop anything new. And they've been quite accommodating in terms of integrating with our system. So we do have a plug-and-play system, say, for CAN TCU. and that's basically there for torque management. And Turbo Lamech, yes, it is potentially a standalone unit, but it also does communicate with our system using CAN bus as well. So if guys want to use the Turbo Lamech, yes, it does work. And you can have basically all the functionality that you would expect from that system and to work efficiently with the motors that you might connect that up to.
So is there any real sort of issue with the 8 HP?
No, it's actually quite a robust gearbox. So yes, the clutch packs seem quite small for what they can handle, but we have seen upwards of 1,000 Newton meters being put through them. Probably the main thing is like the same as always, like with any gearbox, it's always the temperatures that you have to be wary of. So anything over 90 degrees, you start to degrade basically the operation of the valve body or its efficiency. So keeping them cool is probably the main thing. And the other major aspect of any gearbox is basically torque management and how the gearbox, when it wants to do it, shift, how it communicates that to, say, the ECU. And if it's managed correctly, like it should last a lot longer, and we see upwards of 20 to 25% increases in torque that can be put through the gearbox if it is managed correctly.
So now, obviously, we went for a test drive earlier. We're going to go for another drive a bit later.
Sure.
I've never seen an Isuzu move like that before. Tell me about your 2024 MUX.
Okay, so we had this idea to build up something a bit different, produce a lot of torque, and we essentially just bought a off-the-shelf kit from GSL for a twin compound kit, for a twin compound turbo setup. Bolted on fantastically, everything's nice and tight. It actually fits in the engine bay. It's actually quite awesome to look at. We'll probably have to show a little bit of that. That basically produced a really good torque band from 1600 revs all the way through the red line for us using the turbo setups that we have. We've accommodated that to work with larger injectors and a larger fuel pump, and we have produced upwards of 800 Newton meters, closer to 900 Newton meters. And Tommy from Performance Tours in Newcastle, he's been kind enough to actually do some development work also for what we had. We produce awesome numbers, everything works. It's probably a little bit of like an eye-opener for anyone that actually drives the vehicle. And we're basically using that as a bit of a development tool for some of our parts and seeing how far we can push the transmissions and what they can handle. So I have no valve body upgrade in that vehicle, and there's no additional cooling in the vehicle for the transmission at the moment, but I will be fitting that, of course. So I do see that it does creep up quicker than a standard one, but it does do it in a controlled manner.
So we've talked a lot about with the CANHACKER kit, what's the stock gear that's in my car with the version 1. If you're moving into that sort of looking at the V2, the TCU upgrade, would you be looking at also putting in a transmission cooler kit?
For sure. You're definitely on the right track. So anyone that has spent any time towing basically knows that like these transmissions will heat up. So that's why we made the lockup kit in the first place. But if you do want to put down more of the engine torque down to the ground, you can also use the TCM replacement. So that basically does the lockup, the gear shifts and everything for you as well. And yes, but definitely fit a transmission cooler if you are pushing the limits of what the vehicle can do.
So we've talked a lot about, Isuzu and Toyota, obviously. Same manufacturer of the gearbox, a lot of similarities in how your gear sort of works very well across the board. Do you support other manufacturers?
We do other work for other types of engines and vehicles. Like currently, we're assisting a couple of guys. We'll say there is Performance 4x4 Dale. He's putting together an engine package there. I believe it's an M57. That's originally not a solenoid type injector that is being converted or has been converted to a solenoid type injector engine. And that's running a turbo Lamech from what I remember. And yes, so something like that's a given. It's like quite a simple engine or quite a simple common rail engine that can be operated with our kit. So we do support Tridents, we do support Toyotas predominantly. And there are, like say, the M57 is a very popular engine that is also used, and a lot of the OM and Mercedes type inline sixes are used commonly. They all work, and our transmission controllers also work with them.
Yeah, so. No, that's good. So we've covered a lot. We're going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit further before we go for our test drive again. Better put my parachute on. Your products. Where can we find the products? Are they stocked in stores?
So yes, of course, we've got a website. It's boostec.com.au, and we also do supply other distributors, like say APC 4-wheel drive. They're also in New South Wales. There is a lot of places that actually use our systems unofficially and do fit them to vehicles as well. But we do find that there's quite a lot of resellers in Queensland, say for instance, Ron Hill Automotive. We also have Mungie 4x4. There is Jordan at Only Land Cruisers. So there are a lot of people that use our systems already. Yeah. And so there are quite a few resellers.
Yeah, I guess, Queensland, your early beach with Sundays, far north Queensland, you'd want to have a few good suppliers out there.
Yeah. And all those regions, like, if you are travelling, like, say, somewhere where you've got to drive on sand, like, you are going to be heating up transmissions. So that's where, say, the lockup kit used in expert mode does actually come into its own as well, where you can lock it in at an earlier speed. And
So you just touched there on the expert mode. We've spoken a lot about how the CANHACKER can, affect your transmission. What else can this bit of kit do? It sounds like it's the brains of a lot of inspiration, a lot of things you can do that really aren't listed. Where else? Where's the CANHACKER idea come from, and what else can you do with the CANHACKER?
Yeah, so essentially anything that's on a CAN network that it is connected to, it can filter, alter it, or inject different bits of messages in there. So we've predominantly just focused on usability, and some of those things are just basically picking up button pushes on the steering wheel and having them affect a certain type of drive that you do want the transmission to change to. And one of them is the expert mode. So you hold down cruise cancel for 1 second and it just turns on the lockup solenoid, which is in the lockup kit. And there is some safety built into there, like it won't allow you to use it below a certain RPM or below a certain gear. But it does come in handy for the guys that are, say, wanting to do a lot of engine braking or, say, slow speed, hill climbs, for instance. It's like Mount Ousley, what's that one in Adelaide? I always forget. You're going up to Murray Bridge. That one. Going up.
Got me there, mate.
I don't travel there too often. Toowoomba Range and all those sort of places where you are just basically stuck at a slower speed, especially if you're towing, and you just want to hold a steady RPM and just make sure that the transmission doesn't overheat. That's when the lockup kit comes into its own. So that's where we recommend to use the expert mode.
And the thing I've found that I love about it, especially towing, being able to go into manual. Obviously, Isuzu, when they launched the Ford JJ3 range, you couldn't go to manual shift mode and have cruise control on.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's an interesting one. We're just flicking through different messages and blocking different parts of the messaging, and eventually, like, we just found this part that you lose some display on the dash. So you do lose the gear indicator, but it goes back to a drive indicator.
Yeah.
But it allows you to, like, use manual mode. So, like, say you're in fourth gear, you want a cruise control on, you can flick it on.
Yeah.
So there is, you press a button on the steering wheel, you hit the res button.
Yeah.
And once you hit res, it switches to this alternate mode on display and information that's been transferred from TCM.
Yeah.
And it'll just think that it's in normal drive and allow you to use cruise.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, like, it doesn't affect any of the safety systems. So there is no effect on the radar. What's the distance adjust cruise control? And emergency braking and everything still works. So luckily, like, the way the CAN system is actually designed on the Isuzu is there's essentially 5 different channels from memory or different networks, and they can't interact with each other unless they go through the network gateway. So we're doing all this without affecting the safety systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just having that ability to be manual, especially with the van on the back, and cruise. You're sitting on the highway, you're in gear, you're going up a hill, you just drop back a gear and you fly up those hills. It's something that I don't know why they didn't do it in the first place.
Yeah, and that just goes back to what we touched on earlier, which is basically when the vehicle's designed, it's designed to be one size fits all.
So the future with Boostec, we've got a lot of gear. We've got your diff kit, we've got your fuel tank kit. Where's the horizon? Where does this stop, or is it a continual development?
So basically, we just look for problematic areas or areas they want to, or the customers might say want to have changes or different controls built in, and it doesn't really matter to us like what that system is, but we are pushing through with ECU integration, with TCU integration, with dash integration, so we can change a lot of things with our system. So the good thing is, like, when we have a control unit that basically has digital, analog, and network inputs, like we can communicate between all three. And there might be even different types of network, like say on the A750 Toyotas in the 100 series, they use something that's pre-CAN bus, but we do have the ability to go from CAN bus to that network as well. So it's just basically expanding the possibilities of or more connectivity, I should say. And there are other bits and pieces that we're adding, like say Bluetooth and Wi-Fi integration into future models, and also waterproofing things and using better materials and better cooling and so forth.
So it's a continual R&D development.
Correct.
Growth. It's not a one size fits all.
Correct.
Great. So obviously Boostec being the brand, Outback Diesel Systems, is it just yourself in the company, or?
Yeah, so it's just myself. We did actually kick off the business with a few other people, and then we also bounce a lot of ideas, like say with Energetic Motorsports out of US. That's Chris Nelson. If you know Allied Performance, So Allied Performance is putting together quite a decent ute with an American diesel engine in it. That's just the possibilities, and there's no reason actually to be using common rail vehicles in older bodies where we can actually integrate it into newer vehicles now as well. So the possibilities are endless. It's just like how much time we can afford to put into them.
Sounds like there's not enough hours in the day for you, mate.
Cool. Does feel like it, So this is our multi-purpose controller that is essentially the CANHACKER. So it has 24 pinouts. There's multiple inputs and outputs on there, analog and digital. Now, this is not enough to run a transmission, but it's enough to do basic input and output. This is also something that we've expanded out on, and we have this control unit, and as you can see, it's essentially the same, but with basically more pinouts. So this is what we use in the transmission control lineup. This is our workhorse ECU. This is what we use on all our diesels, and this is in partnership with Baldor's BCS control systems, so Baldor Control Systems and Boostec. We basically can run anything up to 8 cylinders or even 16 cylinders. This is our plug-and-play loom for the 5 speeds in the 100 series, so this will control the transmissions and engines using our controllers. This has just been finalised and just been released. Now, we've had about 4 or 5 development cars be running this consistently for quite some time. Basically everything works. All the dash communication works now. So we're quite happy with how this has ended up.
I guess, looking at a lot of these products, there's a lot of variance in what they can do and what they can be adapted to. If someone's got a question in how they, might want to take this loom or and do something, what's the best way they can contact you to just get that conversation going?
So the best way to get onto us is basically send us an email at info@boostec.com.au. And we can discuss your needs. So essentially, like, you can tell us what sort of engine, what sort of gearbox you want to run into what sort of body, and we can make the loom up for you and make all the controllers for you, work in that system. But we also have a wizard that basically does it all for you. That's boostec.com.au/harness wizard or harness-wizard. And you can basically build up your loom online, and if you're happy and you want to go through the checkout process, it gives us exactly what you've put into the system. And so that can be any body, any gearbox, any engine that we currently support. And we're quite happy to take on new ones as well. So, get in touch with us if you want to make a conversion work.
So, Chris, we've covered a lot of your company history, a lot of technical data there, a lot of the products. Myself as a customer, fantastic products, highly recommend them. what we're going to do now, mate, let's go for a drive. Let's go down to the test track, take the car, and we'll see, for me, I guess, first glance, let's have a look at the TCU upgrades, the CANHACKER kit, and we'll see my response from it, and I'll give my opinion on it. I think it's about time, mate, we put the foot to the pedal.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So everything works, all the gear shifts, everything works, and if we need to go down a gear, obviously it does, and there's no torque limitations as such. Other than the ones required for shifting. So there are bits and pieces that I do just to get the right shift pressures. So and say if we want to artificially put the lockup on, it's still the same as previously. Like you hold down the cancel button and it's gone into lockup and giving you a couple of flashes with the transmission light. So obviously it's not designed to be driven like this, but if you want to hold a gear and be in lockup, yes, of course. So to get out of it, you just hold down cancel again, and now we're out of lock. So everything's back to normal. Essentially what you're doing is you've got a variable torque converter speed or stall speed. That's essentially what the clutch makes it do, is like give you a very high stall speed that can be controlled and brought down at the cost of temperatures and obviously the feel of the vehicle being a bit tighter during that time. So there's a lot of programming that goes into just even making the lockup solenoid on the converter work correctly.
Yeah. So Chris, we went for a drive, went for a spin on the testing track. Yeah. Again, mate, your car puts my car to shame. Both the same car, but wow, what a difference! I noticed, a lot more. Obviously, you can feel the torque. You can hear the gearbox is working really well. The gear changes are nice and smooth. For a kit that's relatively new and working through its stages, mate, I think once this comes to full release, I think we're on to a winner here. I really think that, especially your Isuzu, who there's more potential in the car than I think the manufacturers really give it. I think there's room. I think, those towing or doing long drives have got, a lot more we'll get a lot more out of these products, mate. So thanks for your time.
No worries.
Really appreciate it.
No,
been great to meet you finally.
You too.
And look forward to where Boostec goes. Remember, if you'd like to look at their products, jump onto their website, boostec.com.au. My name's Nathan from Flashback Creative Productions. Look forward to our next video.
Cheers.
See ya.